who have a very strong interest in it and try to steer this whole crisis issue toward, you got to deal with the banks on this. And I think sometimes the answers you get are colored by who you ask. And banks will say, yeah, you know, the way you solve this problem is you give us money. And I used to be a video producer, and I would look you in the face and I would say, oh, if you want to solve this crisis, you need to do a video. And I would mean it, and I would mean it. I would think you're kind of foolish if you didn't do it. But you know, a few years ago, I asked Tucker Hart Adams, just through my desperate and losing attempt to understand the economy, we were sort of insulated from a recession a few years ago, and I said, was that because we were building the airport and the stadium and all of that stuff? And she laughed. And she said that, no, none of that is big enough to have an effect on the Colorado economy. And so when you're talking about Denver International Airport, we talk about Coors Field and all of this stuff, and economists say that's not significant, I just find it incredulous that $1.5 million is going to solve anything. Now, for one or two people, that will be a lot of money, and if I were on the table for getting it, I would be cheering you along. But I think when, Governor, you talk about getting people in education, trying to create a new industry, I think those are things we can do. Repairing the infrastructure so businesses want to come here, I think those are things we can do. It just frustrates me that, again, Paulson's waving $700 billion around, and it's not getting anyone to lend money. So I'd like to see this focus on things that we can do and that we know will work. And there are so many of them, like the rest of this proposal. I think those are really what we should focus on.
Right. Madam Chair, I absolutely agree, Representative, that this is one small part, and it's a good thing to talk about the state's role in trying to do job creation and economic development, but our role is broad in that respect, and quite frankly, investing in education and tying education to the things that we're doing in creating different kinds of economies that are 21st century economies, probably the most important conversation in that. I would argue that transportation funding is there as well. And that just flows from all of these conversations that we're involved in on economic development. People want to know how your education system is, and they want to know how your transportation system is. Those are the first really two fundamental questions that they ask when they're considering bringing a company to Colorado or bringing sort of a different industry or growing a company.
Representative Morales.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Governor, I want to thank you for making transportation one of your top priorities, and I know that you really feel like that even though we hear one economist says that infrastructure is not important, I think it really adds jobs. We are going to continue to have less federal funding, and so I hope that we can look at how we can raise $1.5 billion a year through bonding and that kind of thing and sell it to the citizens of Colorado, because that can bring our state out of an economic crisis. And so that, along with capital construction, I know we had to freeze capital construction now because we don't know where the economy's headed, but it was very important this summer that we were able to raise approximately $230 million to build the 13 or 12 projects we're doing. Because if you look at how that trickles down, very important to the subcontractors and et cetera, et cetera. So I think government can help. We just need to figure out how that can happen, and I want you to continue to push transportation in your forethought as we move forward in this economy. Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you, Representative, and so we will, and I thank you for your participation with our Transportation Commission. As you know, in June, since you've recessed, I asked the Transportation Commission to continue their work because I felt we had not accomplished what we needed to accomplish in the first session. And this is really a long haul transportation funding. It's going to be a very marathon of conversations and really a marathon of thought about how we go through this. But we will keep pushing that. The other part of it is my sense that the federal government is also focused on a stimulus package, a need to rebuild infrastructure, and I think as alluded to before by Senator Taft, they need to rebuild infrastructure at the same time create jobs. And so we hope that in Washington, D.C., the sort of thinking will assist us in Colorado with that same, in that same vein, with transportation funding that can help us with infrastructure and job creation.
Thank you. Any other questions for the governor? Todd, did you want to add anything to what's been presented? Mr. Elliman, did you want to add that one? Senator Schwartz.
Thank you, Madam Chair, if you don't mind.
And welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Just one quick, I'd like to commend the governor's efforts on broadband connectivity. We are currently working on mapping and identifying broadband in the state of Colorado, and I believe that will be another infrastructure investment that again will allow for businesses to have the opportunity to build and invest in rural communities in particular. And I understand that's going to be a focus this year, and I applaud your efforts on that.
Thank you, Senator.